Hello there, and thank you so much for bringing me into this wonderful initiative. My name is Elizabeth Spehar, and I'm the Assistant Secretary General for the Peacebuilding Support Office of the United Nations Secretariat. Basically, the concept of peace building is that in countries around the world, you have a lot of fragilities and problems, very complex ones often, that can lead to violent conflict and a breakdown in a society in social cohesion, resulting in a lot of misery and devastation. Peace building is supposed to be actions that you can take to either prevent an outbreak of violent conflict during a conflict or after a conflict, to return a country to peace and to be able to sustain that peace. What does that involve? It involves human rights, it involves development, it involves sometimes humanitarian. In other words, peace building pulls the entire UN system together. We try to work as one to build peace, to help build peace in countries who are of course, in the lead. Well, I have to say that disinformation is a very worrisome topic for us. And definitely we see how disinformation in many societies is being used to create unrest and instability in communities. We see how disinformation actually can be used as a weapon for very specific purposes. It can be used to fuel tensions between particular communities or groups of people by developing false narratives or playing into social prejudices and stereotyping. And this is where, for us at the Peacebuilding Support Office, we also link our concern about disinformation with the rising tide of hate speech. And I can tell you that we have a number of initiatives, and we are funding a number of projects in countries that ask us for that support to try to combat hate speech, particularly in electoral contexts, when different groups are using social media and other means to spread lies about certain groups, to denigrate certain types of individuals, often minorities, which can create electoral violence, or in a non-electoral context can simply create a basis for conflict between different groups of individuals. This is something that we're quite concerned about, and I can link it also to the issue of racism, because hate speech often has a racist intent. And I want to quote my boss, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who has often spoken out very, very strongly against racism. He has very much linked racism to an undermining of peace. And he has said that racism continues around the world to be a driver of persistent inequality. And when there is inequality, whether it's social inequality, political inequality, economic inequality, all of those exclusionary areas, it weakens the social fabric of a society, and it makes a place ripe for conflict. Youth are not only critical to peace building, youth are critical, period. And I'm very happy that this institution, and when I say this institution, I mean the United Nations Secretariat and all of its agencies, funds, and programs, but also the UN membership, the member states, have finally started to give youth their due. We're finally starting to focus on young people as absolutely necessary partners for peace, for development, for the future. But not just because they're the future, because they're the present as well. The thing we also see is we've got about 1.3 billion people in the world right now who are young people, 15 to 24 years old, roughly. And if you look at the places where we work in these fragile and conflict-affected countries, in sub-Saharan Africa, in Asia and Latin America and various places, they tend to have very, very young populations. If you exclude that huge chunk of people of a society, how on earth are you going to build peace? How are you going to sustain peace? We need to engage young people. I would hope that young people really turn the page on what I see as a lot of apathy nowadays about politics, about democracy. I have to say I'm worried about the state of democracy around the world, and the fact that those of us who have benefited from growing up in democratic societies with all of the freedoms that entails and the protections, we're not protecting the very elements that make this possible. So we need young people to be engaged in their own societies first and foremost, to make sure that those freedoms, those rights remain enshrined. Let's not take them for granted, but let's also be agents of change and help other young people around the world who may not have the same opportunities that we do. And when it comes to anti-racism, the buck has to stop with us. We all can be agents of change, and we all can behave and should behave in a way that is respectful of everyone and against racism in whatever form it takes. So we are all about trying to empower youth. And to me, it is an absolute critical variable for peace and for everything we're trying to accomplish. So in terms of how young people can make a difference, honestly, I mean, the sky is the limit, and I'm not going to tell you what to do. I don't need to tell you what to do. I think you know in your heart of hearts what you need to do, and just go and explore the avenues that are out there. I mean, there is such an opportunity, and increasingly so, for young people to be change makers and to be peace builders. But when it comes to disinformation, as I was saying a moment ago, the counterpoint to disinformation is information. And the counterpoint to anti-racist screeds are pro-inclusion narratives. And I can tell you that at the heart of our peace building is the issue of inclusion. When you have exclusion, when you have groups excluded, whether it's young people or people of certain ethnic backgrounds, or poor people, refugees, internally displaced persons, where people are afraid, where there's a lot of changes, where maybe there's a scarcity of resources, there's potential for tension and there's potential for conflict. And it's often the people that we perceive as different from us that get the short end of the stick and that we're going to be talking badly about. So the antidote to anti-racist screeds, the antidote to exclusion is pro-peace narratives, pro-inclusion narratives, anti-exclusion narratives. We are all better together, and we are all stronger together.